What's good, people? It's Ari again, bringing you another episode of The Hard Read. We're gonna get right into it. The topic for this one is about nostalgia. Nostalgia obviously hits everyone differently. It can hit people positively, and it can do so negatively, and depending, it can impact if you decide to give certain things a fair chance by impacting your viewpoints on existing media before you even can see or play it for yourself. In the positive sense, nostalgia can allow a person to remember things that they had positive experiences with when they're about to approach something similar. They can wind up looking for aspects that should be either commonplace in a genre, or things that should be a natural progression of something that already exists, giving you more enjoyment out of what you might have been looking for. In the negative sense, you could also be blinded by nostalgia. You could be fixated so hard on something that you loved in the past, due to your appreciation for it, that you might be ignorant to whatever faults that media may have presented. If not ignorant to any faults it might have, you could simply want something new to be exactly like the thing you remember and nothing more, thus limiting the scope of what you'd be willing to look for and accept, and not giving something new a fair chance to draw you in. Now, we all have issues with balancing this to a certain degree. I, for example, am in love with the Darkstalkers series, and for everything that it's brought to the fighting game genre, and it's brought a lot, I'd recommend looking into just how much. My appreciation level for it is extremely high, as is the level of enjoyment I get out of playing it, but I feel awkward playing certain fighting games now when it turns out they have many aspects that Darkstalkers had, but not others, or it simply doesn't flow as well to me, or whatever else, and my overall enjoyment of that game just isn't the same. Sometimes though, it goes deeper than that. Obviously, there are games that are made with nostalgia being the main selling point. Look how this game reignites memories of this thing you loved. Isn't it cool? Some of them are good, some of them are bad, and then there are different reasons for quality shifts. Some games lean into it only a little, despite saying outright that it was partially inspired by a game, which can hurt if it's supposed to be a follow-up to something else or a spiritual successor. Others don't even hide the attempt at trying to be as much like the thing as that it's a spiritual successor of, and they lean into it as hard as possible, which, if it's done well, can be a fun experience for those familiar with the content. But if it's done poorly, it could almost be a slap in the face to people looking to reignite their love for a particular game, series, or even genre. Something I have a serious focus on myself is Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night. As a spiritual successor to the much beloved Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Bloodstained has a lot to live up to in a lot of ways for a lot of people, but I find that really interesting, since it isn't as if though Castlevania Symphony of the Night was immediately well received upon its release. In fact, when it first came out, Symphony of the Night had some publications state that while it was by no means a bad title, it turned away from what made Castlevania what it was at its core. It took time for the game to pick up steam and gain the cult following that it did, that eventually grew into the fan base that it has now, that views Symphony as this holy grail when it comes to the Castlevania series. And now, all these years later, Bloodstained is in a similar spot, where it has to traverse the lands that Symphony crash-landed into, with the upside being the fact that the series before it created a very strong foundation for it to work with. I love Symphony of the Night. While I wouldn't call it my favorite Castlevania title, for me that's a tie between the 3DS titles, there is no ignoring the impact that it had for the series and its direction. I myself put countless hours into the game, exploring it casually, trying to speedrun it, finding bugs and glitches, and just enjoying all the little things the game had to offer. I even own the Saturn version of it, and despite its issues, I enjoyed it a ton. For all the good it has though, there are spots where I felt Symphony of the Night could be improved upon, and having put the time into both Symphony and Bloodstained that I have, I enjoy Bloodstained much more so than Symphony, when speaking in terms of a direct comparison. From the various weapons having techniques that you can learn and master to use with different weapons, to having tons of spells, familiars, and abilities besides, there's so much more room to do things in Bloodstained that it's nuts. and every other immediately noticeable aspect of the game, from its presentation and graphics to the music, made me fall in love with what Bloodstained offers as a game, both on its own merits and as a spiritual successor to the Castlevania legacy. With all that said though, I wouldn't have been able to come to that conclusion in the first place if it weren't for the fact that I was willing to take off my nostalgia goggles in the first place. If I were still going, geez, this is nice, but I remember when Symphony did this, I'd be diminishing the returns I could be getting out of playing Bloodstained, and that'd be a shame. The takeaway, I think, is to open your eyes. Try your best to broaden your horizons where you can and give things a fair shot. You never know what you could come across that you wind up adoring. Anyway, that about covers my thoughts about nostalgia. Thanks for listening to this ep of The Hard Read. It's much appreciated. If you've got your own thoughts about it, leave a comment. If you like what you listen to, drop me a like and even a subscribe if you wanna. Take care, stay safe, and stay awesome.